As an Oxford-educated economist, Rizwana Bashir was very successful in the private equity industry, but with that success, she still felt a yearning for something more. So while planning a trip to Istanbul, she became very frustrated with the amount of time she had to spend searching for and booking experiences to enjoy during her trip. So a seed of an idea was planted, and ultimately, Rizwana created a unique travel experience site called Peak.com. She's raised $50 million in funding for the company from the founders of Google, Twitter, Kayak, and Peak now offers over 20,000 fun things to do right on one site. As an avid traveler, Rizwana believes that travel is a very important component of a creative lifestyle. It exposes you to new cultures, pushes you out of your boundaries and your comfort zones, and when you try something new, like maybe skydiving or kite surfing, it builds your confidence. So please, help me welcome her to the Nu Skin Live stage, founder and CEO of Peak.com, Rizwana Bashir. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. So we were just talking backstage, and I said to her, I hope there's a time, somebody to wind us up, because I could just sit and talk to her all afternoon. But thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
It's just lovely, lovely to have you here. I was thinking during the introduction that, and I'm sure many of you in the audience have had several similar experiences when you're planning trips, and the frustration of finding all the things that you want to do and planning all of those experiences is cumbersome and time consuming. But not many go and create a whole travel website experience. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you and what kind of made you think, oh, there's an opportunity here.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. So when I was working in private equity, as mentioned, and I went on this birthday trip to Istanbul. So I'm a little bit type A, and so I decided to get really into researching. I spent 20 hours figuring out what we should do and then trying to book it. And so I found that, booking a flight or the hotel, that wasn't why I was going. I was going for the experience, and yet it was so difficult to figure out what was high quality, what was fun to do, what matched my interests. And so I realized that there was an opportunity to build a business around it. And so I started digging in, and I ended up launching Peak.com. And fast forward where we are today, we've raised $50 million. We offer about 20,000 activities. There's about almost $500 million of bookings going through the platform this year. So it's come a long way, but it really is about that underlying thing, which is I want to find great things to do at home or when I'm traveling, and how do we make sure we do that?
Yeah, I mean, did you ever think, I read here, Forbes said that Peak.com is on track to be the next $1 billion travel experience site. Did you think of those possibilities? Was that part of your dream?
I think that it's always kind of a bit scary to be kind of called those kind of things, but I think I really did believe that there was a big business to be built here, and I'd had enough background in finance to see that there was a really big market. It's $180 billion globally. So I thought there was a lot of opportunity, but it's hard to kind of build those big businesses, and I'm excited to be on the journey. It hasn't been a completely easy path. There's been a lot of work that we've done to get there, but it is really fun. It's also a huge passion of mine. So I think whenever you're doing something that you love, it's great. I was the person that was paragliding in Rio, or was trying to find a really cool, kind of experience visiting the slums in Mumbai, so I could get an opportunity to really understand those places. And so, my mission is to connect the world through experiences. And how do we get to know each other better through that? And so it's fun to do a job that's so in line with what your passion is.
Mm-hmm. Now, you tell me a little bit about how you feel about giving back. I mean, you have had business accolades. You were named one of Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs. You're one of Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business. Congratulations for those two accolades. But I understand that you didn't have a super conventional start to your life. Where you, I mean, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I was probably the last person that thought I was going to be here talking to you about being a CEO. So I grew up in the UK. My parents are Pakistani immigrants, so they came over from Pakistan. My dad sold fruit and vegetables on a store. My mom didn't work or speak English, and so I grew up in a pretty poor place. And it was a place where women didn't have a ton of opportunity. So, none of the women that I grew up with were working. They didn't have access to education. I didn't wear Western clothes. So the first time I wore a pair of jeans was when I was 18. So it was a very different dynamic and environment. And, that was not, it was a pretty tough place to grow up. If you're poor, there was a lot of abuse at home, a lot of violence. And so it wasn't a place that kind of lent itself to you having big dreams. And so, given that tough environment, I think I always wanted to get out. And I found that school for me was a really great place to do it. I've always been incredibly curious. And so I used school as an avenue for being able to hopefully make something of my life. And so I did really well. I worked really hard. I was that nerdy kid that was reading extra books and doing far more homework than most other people were. And that got me a scholarship to go to Oxford. And so going to Oxford completely changed my life. So I ended up getting there, and that allowed me to have access to all these new things and a lot of confidence to be able to go after my dreams. And so, that was a really big changing point, and one that has allowed me to become the person I am today. Without that, I would have lived a very, very different life.
Well, congratulations. What kind of advice do you have to give? Like when you grow up in a situation like that, and everybody has a different situation that they're dealing with and a different situation that they're coming from. What are some of the characteristics, the character traits that you see in yourself, or things that pieces of advice that you would give to people to help get through that, and to, when you have that deep desire to want something more, what does it take to get there?
I mean, I think there's a few things. The first I'd say is capitalize on your strengths. I think one thing that we always do is that we look at our weaknesses and we kind of beat ourselves up about the things we're not good at. And it turns out lots of people aren't good at lots of things, but you are probably good at one or two things in a way that no one else is. And so have that confidence to double down on your strengths. I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd had more confidence when I was kind of coming in. It's funny because, now I spent my life getting these accolades to prove to people that I was smart and capable. So, I ticked the box to go to Oxford. I ticked the box to work at Goldman Sachs and Blackstone. I ticked the box to come to America to go to Harvard Business School. And these were all boxes in some ways. I was trying to show to people, hey, I may not be from where you think, smart kids come, but I'm a really capable, competent person. And in the end, I think you just need to have more confidence in yourself, because you don't need to tick those boxes. What you need to do is do what you're passionate about and capitalize on your strengths, because you're going to be great at that. I feel like one of the challenges, especially with women, I think often we're self-deprecating. We're starting a conversation with, maybe this is wrong, but, right? And I just think we have to not do that. I think we have to show ourselves, show up as our best selves and have more confidence in ourselves. And I think that those are the two biggest things. I think the third piece is persistence. I failed lots and lots of times. It has not been an easy ride, and you've got to be able to take that failure and let that kind of, take you to the next level, right? You've got to be able to forgive yourself for those things. I could be my own worst critic. I'm a bit of a perfectionist at times. And that's not good, because sometimes you'll make mistakes and you learn from them, and it's much better to learn quickly than it is to never make a mistake because you're so fearless, so fearful of doing that. So those are the things I think that I would give as advice to everyone in this room.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, as entrepreneurs who want more, I think most of the people in this audience are people who are here because they want more. Did you ever feel on that long road, Oxford, Harvard, such, I'm sure it wasn't difficult and the road was not easy. Did you ever feel like, I'm done. I'm going to give up because this is too hard. I wasn't taken seriously in this situation, or like, what am I doing?
Yeah. So you might know this, but about 2% of venture capital goes to women. And so that means when you're going into a room and going out and trying to raise capital as a woman, it's not that fun. And that's because often people don't see you as being like themselves, right? And we often connect with people and want to give people chances who remind us of ourselves. And, I was coming into American rooms where I had different accents. Sometimes an advantageous accent, actually. It turns out you Americans do like a British accent if you're going to win. But I looked different. People didn't necessarily think that, I had the persistence and grit to be able to build a great business. And so that was really difficult because you get a lot of no's, and it's disheartening. And frankly, when you make mistakes and you get a lot of no's, you can kind of think, well, maybe I suck. Maybe it's my problem. And I think what I found in those moments was that it was really great to have, people around you that supported you. So I've got a great co-founder, and we were able to kind of say, hey, no, don't worry, we're on the right track, and to really have faith in what we were doing. But it was also really great to kind of recognize and take in that negative feedback, give yourself the time to recover from that, and get back on again. So, there were times where I had a tough day, I had some pizza, I had some chocolate cake, I had a good night's sleep, and I went back on the road. And so I think sometimes you just got to give yourself that moment to recognize things aren't going really well. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why does it matter to you? And, the next day is a fresh day. It's a fresh start.
I love that idea that it's a fresh start. It's a fresh day.
I'm not sure everyone should take lots of pizza and chocolate cake, but it did the job on those days.
Well, I was going to ask you, I was thinking while you were talking, when somebody underestimates you or did that, you kind of stop and regroup and then you get that fire in your belly again because they underestimated you. What are some bits of advice that you can give besides the chocolate and the, like, mindset and perspective? What are some of the things that you could share that help you kind of get through and to fire back at the underestimators?
I mean, I think, keep your focus. What is it that you want to achieve? Keep your focus on that. Double down on your strengths. We've all got weaknesses. Maybe you've got weaknesses that, you can complement with someone else in your team or someone else that you work with or you can learn from. I think one thing that's important is to remember you've got to work really hard. I think there's a lot of talk in today's world about work-life balance. And I'm not really sure that I really believe in that. I think sometimes, your work needs to take precedence and sometimes your life does. And I don't know anyone who's successful that doesn't work really hard. It doesn't matter what they do, and I think that we sometimes forget because the way that people present themselves on social media is the best life, the best version of themselves, right? But everybody that that's doing a great job is probably working those extra hours. They're getting up in the morning earlier than everyone else. They're making sure that at night they're working on those things. And so I think don't be afraid to work hard. Sometimes I was always worried that if I put all that extra effort in and it didn't work, then, I sucked, right? But it's okay, put that extra effort in. Sometimes it won't work, but you'll know that you gave it, you put your best foot forward. I definitely do think that we all need to learn from not being too critical of ourselves, just because I think that often prevents you from taking risks. I think if you've got an idea, maybe as an entrepreneur, or you want that promotion, or you want to step up and do something new and it's a creative idea, remember to just give yourself the chance to do it. The worst that can happen is that somebody says no.
Right. So take me back to starting your company. You had this, you don't get here overnight, right? You had this dream, you start this company. Just take me back and tell me, if you have an example of a struggle that you went through and you pushed through. Starting, you went from having a difficult time, spending 20 hours trying to plan all your excursions to launching Peak.com.
Yeah.
So fill in those, I'd love to hear the story about how that started.
Yeah. Well, I'll actually talk to you a little bit about one of the struggles we had early on was that we started this website to help people book experiences. So if you want to go zip lining or whitewater rafting, you want to find these great things to do. Maybe you want to do an art tour or a cooking class. We wanted to make it easy for you to book. And so we basically were working with these small businesses, and they didn't have online booking. We didn't know when they were available. But we thought we'll just put it on their schedule, we'll fake it, right? So maybe you can do a boat tour this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And what we found is that when we did that, people were booking and we couldn't connect with the business. And so about 40% of the people who were booking on our site couldn't get their activity because they wanted to book in a short window in a few hours. That's not a good consumer experience. So if you come in and you think you're getting something this afternoon and we can't offer it because we can't get hold of the business, that really sucks. And so what we quickly realized is if we're going to do what we think we want to do, which is help consumers book great things to do, we're actually going to have to get all these businesses online. So we're going to have to give them tools and software to run their business. And the only reason they're going to do that is if we can help them improve their businesses. And so we set about building software for small businesses. We set about giving them online booking tools for their own website. We set about giving them kind of all of the capabilities to run their business using their phone or a computer. And that was a lot of work, and that was a lot of us kind of going out into the field, working with hundreds and thousands of businesses, hundreds and into thousands now of businesses to help them with that. And today we have a huge software business where, you know, the businesses that work with us on average increase their bookings by 30 or 40% when they start working with us. They save hours and hours of time, and they massively improve their customer experience. But that was that wasn't where we originally started, but it was what we needed to do in order to succeed.
Oh, it's so fun to hear, you know, your journey of how you took that. I just have another question about, you know, do you feel a responsibility? You have got great accolades and you have been so successful as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman. Um, tell me a little bit about the responsibility you feel. Do you feel a responsibility to give back, or what are your views on that?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really, really important that if you have a voice or you've gotten to a point where you have some success, that you give back. I think often we, you know, think that you have to, reach a certain pinnacle before you're in the time in your life where you're giving back to society. But I think actually we can all give back, you know, even as we're on the route. And so that's something that's been really important to me. And I think taking my voice and using it for something positive, both in terms of what we do as a company. We promote entrepreneurship. We're helping all of these small businesses to succeed, which I think is the backbone of the economy. But I think personally for me as well. So, you know, I grew up in an environment that was pretty tough. And unfortunately, I was sexually abused as a child growing up. And one of the things that I did as an adult after business school and living in America is that I went back to my community and I prosecuted a case against my abuser. And he ended up going to jail. Thank you. And I think this is a topic that's always delicate to discuss, but I bet lots of people in this room have had a pretty bad experience with the advent of the Me Too movement. I think many of us are talking about these issues because they're really important, and it's kind of the dark side of our society, and these things happen. But the only way that we can overcome them is by talking about it and helping victims and getting rid of that culture of shame around abuse. And so I went back to my community, and frankly, people weren't very supportive. Even my parents weren't supportive of me doing that. But I did it because I felt a moral obligation. I wanted to make sure that I protected other kids from having that happen to them by that same abuser. But as I did that, I also recognized over time that I had an obligation to everybody to say something about it. And so I ended up using my voice to write about my case and the fact that we'd had this successful prosecution. And then, one of the newspapers in England ended up using that as a cover story. 1 million people read that story, and I had, thousands of people reach out to me and say that inspired them to come forward and stop abuse that was happening to them, to go after court cases, and basically help their own communities. And so I think that was a really big and important step for me in using my voice in order to hopefully, have a and become a social activist around an issue that was very important to me, and one that I think the Pakistani community had to deal with, but also every community, it turns out. And so I think that I'd like to be able to continue to help others in that light, as well as to help them, in order to, hopefully inspire role models. I think, when I was growing up, nobody who looked like me was an entrepreneur. I didn't see people like me, doing the job that I do now. And I think that it's really important that now that I am here, I can help others. And so, that part of giving back is very, very important to me.
Yeah, and I feel like
Thank you.
I love that story, and I feel like the healing happens when we unite. The healing happens and the progression happens when we connect, when we unite and connect.
Yeah.
And I love that you shared that with us. We just have a couple more minutes, and I'm dying to know. There's a lot of similarities in your stories. I think we're more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
To everyone in this room, and I'm just curious. You said your parents weren't very supportive, and I'm sure everyone in this room has a dream, and there's probably someone close in their life who might not be that supportive. And what goes on in your perspective when you don't get that support from someone who is close to you in your life?
I think that, sometimes if you don't have that support, if you do, that's amazing, and harness that and use it. I've got friends where, their mum is texting them in the morning saying they're amazing, right? And that gives them the boost that they need. But if you don't have that, then I think it's really important to do that for yourself, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to have the confidence to go out and do these things. And it's really hard to think that you're good at things. But remember that you probably are. And I'd say take that confidence, take risks in your life. You're never going to get anywhere if you're staying in that exact same road that someone else has predetermined for you. And so if you can, whatever it is that gives you confidence, maybe it's becoming more knowledgeable about something. If you want to go into a room and you want to show that you're the best in it, you have to know everything about that issue. Do it. Learn everything that you can so that you can have that confidence. So whatever it is that gives you confidence, for some people it might be, I went to the gym this morning and I've got my endorphins going, and that gives me confidence. But build your confidence so that every time you go into the room, you're giving yourself the best chances that you can.
I love that. So my takeaways from this afternoon is from you, and the inspiration to me is just determining what you want to go after. And then I saw you problem solve around those things, those roadblocks that were in the way. I saw you never giving up. I saw you having confidence in yourself. What an inspirational story that you offer.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ruzwana Bashir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'll give you a hug.
Oh, thank you.